hear any music, Andres, if you're playing it. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Omnic Lab, episode 141. This week is going to be the massive patch fix, I guess you could say, for what we have been encountering in the meta for months and months and months. My name is Rob, not Deathblow, as the stream might convince you otherwise, but I'm back this week. I'm done with being sick and also delays with pretty much everything. This last week was just nuts to get back on my feet. So special thanks and shout out to Deathblow for filling in for me, and Andres and Deathblow for breaking down all of the crazy stuff that we got dropped on us last week. Andres, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's good to have you back. Your voice is back. Your throat doesn't sound too bad anymore. So we're back to normal.
Nope. Also, if you wanted a fun fact that I learned this week is Hanamizu means you have a runny nose. That's something that I heard a lot this week, and it translates to being running water, or your Hana's nose and Mizu's water. So basically, just nose water.
So is miso soup? Is that like water soup?
There's mizu, which is M-I-Z-U, and then there's miso, which is M-I-S-O.
Okay. Never mind then.
Miso is the soup. And I think... No, I'm not going to say that because that sounds ignorant. Okay, but we have some really cool announcements that I want to get through here. And I'm going to start off with the most basic of them, which is game night. It's the 22nd of last month was when we had our last one. So that means this month we're having it on the 29th of March. So if you guys want to be here and hang out, we'll be doing it at the very end of the month on Friday night. For everyone in stateside. So please come, hang out, play some games, learn a lot. And the next announcement is the one that we've been working months on getting, which is we have fixed our feed on RSS. We had a big scare last week, so that's up. The next thing that we did is we moved our feed over to a more reliable RSS client to get better stats, better monetization options, as well as put us on the map for Spotify. But we need your help. So I put a link in the description for those of you who have Spotify. Please go to the feed, sub to it, share it with your friends. Let them know that we're on Spotify. We'll make a link in our Twitter post as well as our Discord. You can go there and you can help boost our numbers on Spotify so people can find us easier. You can search Overwatch in the podcast section, or you can search Omnic Lab in general, and you'll find us.
Yeah, tell your mom, tell your friends, your grandma, your cousins, everybody. Tell them we're on Spotify now. Yeah, tutor. If you just tell everyone to follow Omnic Lab, the best place to learn Overwatch strategy. No, but we're super excited. This is going to be a much more reliable way to get you guys content on a timely basis and a little more consistent across all the platforms. We're also on iHeartRadio and Google Play Store. So we're expanding, boys. We're getting there.
Woo-hoo. We got it out. So if you guys want to check that out, please do it. Let us know how the feed sounds. We actually are finding out a lot more about some things with our show notes, as well as some image optimization options for Spotify to make it look a little bit more appealing on that end. So we're looking to do some things in the back end to basically condense things down, make it look a little bit cleaner for everything. And we're still going to be doing the same platforms that we've done prior, which is Twitch and YouTube. If you guys are listening or watching in those formats, you have them there. Just a reminder, we do have merch in case you're wondering. I'm wearing one today. This is a V-neck. You can get on our website. We don't really advertise it a whole lot, but you can get merch if you like our logo or our brand. We did update our brand on our merch site, so you can get some more updated stuff. This is like retro, I don't know, week one of launching the store that I have a shirt for. So this shirt's already outdated, believe it or not. But anyways, if you guys want to check out some people who bring Omnic Lab to you every week, you can support Top Score Solutions, which is presented in a large part for our show here. Top Score Solutions is basically an esports oriented community for business education and analytics. They develop, if you are looking to develop businesses, services, organizations, or just creating content within the esports field, go check them out. Flagship podcast they have now is called Esports Business, or is in the esports business category. And you can find them on Podbean and iTunes as well. You can check their website at topscoresolutions.com or find the Discord link in our show notes or on our website. Andres, why don't you let people know what is going on in the Switch sphere?
Yeah, we've talked about it. Omnic Meta is always a great place to find all of your stats. Switch has been working a lot on making that website really, really cool and have a ton of features for you guys to check out your progress and share it with everyone. He's now expanded to Owl Stats, and I've been actually working with him a little bit. I've been dabbling around in some of the Owl Stats this week. I'm going to see if I can bring you guys some reports, some cool stuff to hang on the website, and even discuss on shows like Owl Recap, where we focus all about Overwatch League. So check that out. Really cool content, especially if you're into data. I look into Overwatch more from that scope, analytical, more number oriented. So if you're into that, that's the place to go. And as always, check out our Humble Bundle monthly affiliate. The link will be posted in our show notes if you guys like some cheap games and as well as support the show. Sometimes some really cool games for prices you wouldn't believe. Only $12, you get a whole bundle of games. So check it out if you're into that sort of thing and support the show at the same time.
All right. Well, the first thing that we have is basic recap of what we talked about last week. Just to let you guys, as a reminder, we covered the patch notes for PTR on February 26th. And then as soon as they did that, they talked also about Baptiste with Deathblow. But this week, basically right after they recorded that episode, not when we posted it, but when they recorded it, we got 2 days later another PTR update that was really big. It's basically a part 2 to the 26th. And then we have like some other mismatched of things that are toning back a couple of the changes or boosting forward some of the other stuff, as well as a whole slew of bug fixes on March 1st, 6th, and 8th. So my guess is the less totality of the changes, these patches have kind of been condensed down a bit more as we've been getting them, and they've been more bug fixy oriented. So I have a feeling that these PTR changes are going to be going live this week. But maybe even by the time you have this podcast in your eardrums, you're going to be like ready to go roll out into the new mega patch that's hitting live.
More than likely,
And
I think that they've learned their
Baptiste too.
lesson about teasing heroes, putting them in a PTR and waiting too long to release. They don't like doing that.
Yeah.
So my guess is next week at the latest, we'll see this patch
Yeah.
coming out and some big changes coming to Overwatch.
Yeah, they actually let us test the hero a bit more this time, so we can work out a lot of those crazy bug fixes beforehand. And we're wrapping up, what is it, almost 2.5 weeks of Baptiste being on PTR with all these other new changes. So I would imagine that we're gearing in. But I haven't gotten a chance to talk really a whole lot about my opinions on Baptiste, but I feel like Deathblow and Andres did a pretty good job. The only thing I'll add to the discussion before we move into just all of the other PTR stuff is that Baptiste, to me, feels like a really good inclusion to the support roster because it isn't he isn't a very good, like, what I would say catch-all healer in the way that Ana and Mercy are. Meaning that, like, he synergizes much better with certain heroes than he does with like Winston and Diva. Like when I was running a more mobile comp with you and Frito and some other people that we were running stuff with Deathblow on PTR that one night, I really didn't feel like Baptiste was too particularly strong in a more general sense. I felt like he fit the mold of Overwatch where it's like, okay, well, he's going to be really good with this hero and this hero and this hero. It's not like you can just pick Ana in all of these comps and still roll out a pretty decent win rate. Like, you're going to have to adjust quite a bit, kind of like the whole format. When you're playing Moira, you want to have everyone kind of close to you, or you want to have everyone kind of bunching up when you shoot them with your heals. You want to have heroes that can benefit from your immortality field, like Pharah. You want to have some cool stuff that you can run with his projected, what's it called? The amplification matrix.
Mm-hmm.
You want to have some ways to access that, as well as you're going to want to have maps that you can benefit from using your exo boots and getting high ground options.
Yeah, after playing a little bit more with him, I definitely like the idea they're taking with his healers. I think that one of the things that has always thrown me off of healers a little bit is that, for example, with Mercy, you're very cornered into just healing, right? Like, yeah, you have a blaster, but that really is not your strength. And if you're just gonna try to shoot people, you might as well be picking another hero. And I think that for a while, heroes like that seem very unappealing to me, just because I want to be shooting, right? I want to be part of the action, and like I don't mind healing. And with certain heroes, you can do it. Like with Lucio, it's a bit more dynamic in that sense. Anna is great. I love the inclusion of Anna. She is super dynamic in the sense that you have to go back and forth between enemies and allies. And Baptiste is definitely up there with her. Like you're super dynamic in the sense that you have to keep an eye on her team. You're also be able to shoot the enemy team. You can, if you're good with aim, you can get a lot of juice out of his hits, and that feels good. I don't know. That feels dynamic. It feels like I'm not only a huge help for my team, I'm also a threat, right? And if you try to come at me, I can shoot at you, and I can like abuse those mechanics. And I love that. I wish that more healers were like that. And I like that design mechanic. And I do get that sometimes they want to go a little bit more to the fringes, kind of like with Doomfist or Hammond, right? Heroes that are not FPS heroes or pure FPS heroes, but are more like all about that movement and enhancing or highlighting other aspects of the game. I don't know, but I like the shooting though.
Yeah. Andres, while I'm talking, could you go ahead and switch up some things on the stream here? Because I'm still displayed as Deathblow.
Oh, no
um,
worries, no worries. I just changed the stream title. Yeah, we need to update from last week.
yeah, but I don't want to like do too much with with all of this updates with Baptiste, because even now opinions are going to be shifting in in the coming weeks when we start getting more and more things that are actually developing in the pro scene, in the contender circuits, in just like innovation with using the hero at large. Like our opinions when we had Ana released were even off kiltered. Um, and we also have a lot of other things that have been kind of adjusting on the PTR to the point that it's like these are establishing a brand new standard rather than like, hey, this new hero is introduced in the same format that we had before. It's like now Blizzard's like, okay, here's a brand new hero to mix everything up, and then here is a completely new matrix in which you have to interpret all these new things. Not just with regards to the new hero, but because we have all of this crazy changes with other stuff. So to piggyback on what happened last week, on the 28th, we got some more updates. So I'm going to run through a couple of these for you. And anything that we don't mention, it's not that we don't know that it doesn't exist. It just doesn't mean that we either have time or we don't think it's as sizable of a strategic discussion. But the first thing is Junkrat's frag launcher got its damage increased and then reduced a couple days later. So basically, um, the frag launcher has what's called impact damage and explosive damage that has a fall off on it. Okay, so if you get hit by a direct frag, or a grenade from him, the previous damage was 120 damage. Okay, so you have 40 damage of that would be a bonus of getting hit from a direct round. Okay, and 80 of that would be the explosion damage that would have a harsh fall off after a certain zone. Okay, so they bumped that up to 60 so that the total damage was 140. But they noticed that this damage was getting to be a critical mass with damage boost stacking with regards to Orisa, damage amplification matrix from Baptiste, as well as Mercy damage boost and Zenyatta, Orbs of Discord. It was getting to be a bit too crazy. Not with all of them in play, because obviously if you're just stacking a bunch of damage boosting things, you're not really playing Overwatch in general. Like you're running
I don't know. That might be the next
too
game
many
of the
things.
name of the game. That might actually be a strat, a legit strat. Just stack everything on one
Just
hero.
pocketing one hero.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. But yeah, and Ana too. So you have like basically you have Ana, Orisa, Baptiste, Mercy, Zen, and then a damage dealer. So that would be all of the damage boosting stuff, and 3 of them are supports. So I don't know how viable that would be. But more or less they said that was getting to be too much with regards to that. So they toned it back down by 10. So now his total damage is down to, let's see here, down by 10. So yeah, instead of the 140, it's down to 130, and then they increased the charge rate time. So it's going to take you 10% longer to get to your rip tires, which is interesting to me because, like, I really don't like them giving more of this because the rip tire is already relatively hard in some senses to charge with relationship to how much damage you can output on Junkrat. It seems to be a bit much, but maybe we can just figure this out. To me personally, I really think that Junkrat needs a bigger tool set, but he's definitely one of those heroes that, like, when they mentioned they nerfed Reaper with his passive because he's like on that fringe where he can be way too powerful at lower tiers and yet completely useless at the upper tiers, and they have to balance the game for everyone. So I feel like this was more of a change with regards to pocketing Junkrat in a lower rank with like 1 damage boost or 2 damage boosts or something like that. It's just too much for low skill players that, more or less don't get out of the way. It just happens when you're less
Yeah,
coordinated.
right now that's kind of what everyone is saying, right? The Junkrat
Mm-hmm.
is looking a little bit dangerous because they are basically using it as their antidote for goats. Right now, I think they're going like
Mm-hmm.
doubling down on we want goats to not be the dominant composition. We want something more. Overwatch League is getting dominated by it. The ladder is getting dominated by it. It's definitely trickled down so much that even in platinum or in gold, you sometimes see goats and like your games, right? And I think it's becoming a little bit too dominant. And Blizzard doesn't want to do another patch where things don't change, especially a patch where a new hero is coming out. It would be the biggest disappointment if the new Batiste comes out and maybe he just becomes like another goat's tool, or worst of all, not even played and just goats become keeps being the indestructible thing that it is. And I think that right now they're mega buffing Junkrat as that like we don't want goats to be here anymore. We tried buffing Reaper, that didn't work out. Let's go all in on Junkrat. Let's see how this happens. And I think that I don't know. It's a bold move. It's a risky move because it could work. And if it does work, if Junkrat becomes like super strong to the point where running 3 tanks into him is almost suicide, because it's gonna be getting rip tires and just like dealing an insane amount of damage to you, then Widowmaker, McCree, Soldier, any of the big hit scans, Ash, that have a lot of range, start looking a little bit more appealing, right? If those start looking more appealing, then characters like Genji, like Winston, those are becoming more appealing again. And maybe we can get the cycle kind of going again with the meta. Start that discovery phase of like, okay, what's really good? What's the momentum? Maybe get a little bit more rock, paper, scissor and not so much like rock, paper, goats. That's kind of like happening right now. It's just like you pull out goats, there's a few counters, but not really. Like the goats still kind of like really strong.
Yeah, it's really interesting what they've decided to adjust to basically negate goats or drop it down, because they've nerfed Brigitte so much that it's like it looks like less of Brigitte making goats and more of just Brigitte being overtuned as a hero. So to me, it seems like if they're gonna undertune Brigitte and then undertune armor as a whole, that's a good staple for where they want to set the precedence of like where they think armor is at a healthy spot and getting Brigitte to a healthy spot. And then they're gonna notice, okay, these are the other things. So they started things off with buffing Junkrat and then buffing Reaper, but then they realized the Reaper may be too powerful, so they pulled his healing back by 10% down to 40 again. So it's still a little bit higher than the 30, 35 that they had before, but it's not like to the point that he just literally can't die when he's doing ultimates at like lower tiers or
Yeah,
when
especially
he's
the
just
lower
sitting in your
ranks,
back
it's
line.
super strong. I was actually looking at
Right.
coaching my girlfriend. She's been getting into Overwatch now with Overwatch League. She likes
Mm-hmm.
playing Diva, and I've been coaching her. And I saw it firsthand. It was one game where this Reaper was just dominating, and at that
Yeah.
rank, it's a lot easier because players are not as keen of turning around and like as soon as they hear a Reaper behind them, reacting to that. It takes a
Yeah.
second. Like, for example, my girlfriend is not super used to it, so um, when Reaper's firing behind her, sometimes she just assumes as this battlefield noise, and she's not paying too much attention. So the Reaper is just abusing that fact. He was flanking everywhere and basically carrying his team, and I had to be like, okay, listen, we're gonna have to pay attention to this Reaper. Like every time you hear that pow, pow, pow behind you, you gotta turn around, you gotta put your matrix
Mm-hmm.
on him. But I was there telling her this and guiding her through the whole thing. For a player that doesn't have a more experienced player, like sitting by her shoulder and telling her like, hey, watch out for this. That Reaper does get out of hand fast. And,
Yeah.
the same thing can happen with Junkrat. So it's interesting because I don't think they're trying to nerf any of the heroes from GOATs. They don't want to make those heroes unviable, right? They still want those heroes to retain their power. But I think that as a whole, they work too well and they're too strong. So instead, they're like, okay, what's the hero that's best positioned to cause a lot of trouble to a composition that wants to play like that, right? Like grouped up with huge health pools. They decided that they're gonna go for Junkrat, and I don't know. I think that's gonna try to be like their ace in the hole. We'll see
Well,
how
they
it
they
pans out.
actually seem to have tried it with a bunch of other heroes and that no avail, right? They got that big buff to McCree, they got the big buff to Reaper, they got the big buff
Right.
to Junkrat. They're like, well, we're just choosing one of these targets and giving them some more tools here and there. And this is one of those things where you kind of get a little worried. You're like, well, you're gonna just keep buffing these things, but if you look at it like if you kind of pull back a little bit from these changes and just look at it as more of like, okay, so Blizzard is doing these changes, and then they're going to do this huge swath of buffs and nerfs across the board. Then you're going to get into this new environment, and it's like, well, we don't know as a development team what the community is going to do, but at some point, everything's going to change, and then everyone's going to start whining about something that's different. But as long as people are whining about something that's different, you have a different game to be playing, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue. So if you kind of get your brain into this more even mentality, you're like, okay, well, we had dive for however long, now we've had goats for however long, and honestly, as boring or as bad of a rap as goats has gotten or has gotten over the course of this last year, however long it's been in place, it's still less than how long dive has been in place. To be sure, we've had dive for an insane amount of time, and even when people were complaining about other previous metas, like I don't know, when that quad tank had that little blip on the radar way back when there was Beyblade meta, when there's other things like the Bastion meta that only lasted a couple days. Like there's all of these other metas that have developed over the course of Overwatch's history, but only a couple of them have stuck for a long time because the development team has decided that, this is relatively healthy, or the community is not really adopting a whole lot of changes, or GOATS is kind of shifted in how it's been played or how the heroes have been played in that format, but people are still saying, well, it's still good enough to play, so we're going to still play because it's easy. And then you
I
go
will.
see Chengdu whip out, Bastion, Torb, double barrier, and you're like, okay, well, come at me.
Yeah, there's still some teams playing all this stuff. It's not like goats is the only thing, but it's
Right.
definitely like almost too oppressive, and it's too noticeable in Overwatch League when the right answer almost
Every
in every
team.
map is to go goats, and the teams who don't have their goats in order are the bottom tier right now. So I mean, it's just too strong. I do agree that Overwatch needs a little bit of change, and I will say maybe an unpopular opinion, and to be honest, I'm not 100% with it, but this would be one of the only benefits that I can clearly see from having a role queue. Like right now, balancing this game is really, really hard. It's a balancing nightmare for some of these developers because the
They've
more
even said
heroes
it
that
so
you
much.
add, it just gets harder and harder. And goats, it's honestly not so much that each of the individual heroes is overpowered, but the abilities as a whole stack up so well that it's just like too strong. And the problem is this: if you nerf those abilities so that they're not as strong in conjunction with each other, then those heroes by themselves kind of like fall off. They're kind of bad. They're only strong in the context of ghosts. So like how do you balance those, right? How you retain Brigitte to be viable when not in ghosts, or Lucio to be good when he's not pushing people around? What about Reinhardt, right? If he doesn't have like all those auras and shields around him, how do you make him shine? And you could argue like, oh, you can do this, you can do that, you can do this, but then like other heroes suffer as well. And I think that as a role queue, that would be one of the only benefits, because when you know like, hey, every team can only have two tanks, every team can only have two healers, every team can only have two DPS, Is a more clear cut, more limits that you can be like, okay, if that's the case, we know there's never going to be more than 3 tanks. We know there's never going to be more than 3 healers. So we can actually, increase the healing of this healer, or, this healer doesn't have to do all of this, or etc. What do you think of that?
I definitely had talked about this over the last 2 weeks with people in Discord about kind of coming around to role queue being an inclusion. Because the more I thought about it, the more I was just like, well, this is something that the community could probably benefit from. Maybe not necessarily Overwatch League, but people that are not playing in the top level of competitive, not playing in scrims, not playing in open division, not playing in contenders, not playing in the top level. As long as the game is trying to be balanced in any sense, and then also trying to balance it around the 2-2-2 flip or setup that people have kind of established as what they like about Overwatch, putting 2 tanks with 2 healers and 2 DPS and kind of balancing it that way. I can see that being a big boon to the development balance team, the creativity direction of the game, um, giving them a good release cycle for heroes at large. I feel like there's a lot of benefits to doing this sort of thing. But at the same time, I do have a lot of questions as to if they do this, what is Overwatch League going to develop into? What is a pro circuit going to look like? Are we going to force this kind of 2-2-2 mentality into restrictions for how teams are, recruiting, how teams can play, how can they practice, how can are you able to run 3 supports and 3 tanks if you want to? Can you still run 4 tanks and 2 supports? Can you run,
Yeah, I will say like
are you allowed to? Because I
it,
like
it
that
would,
creativity.
yeah, it would be, in my opinion, it would be kind of lame to lose a little bit of that ability to be like, hey, look at these offbeat compositions. Like, it would be nice, like 3 tanks, 3 healers is still like a thing, just maybe not as strong. But I think that from a logistics perspective, it's getting to a point where it's clear that it's not a job that is simple. You can't just be like, oh yeah, make a change here, make a change here. We got it. Because they've actually made a lot of changes while trying to maintain some viability to the characters. And that's key, right? Like, they don't want characters to be unviable. In fact, they've gone out of their way to have every character at least be somewhat useful in some context, right? They've even reworked heroes from the ground up. That's almost unheard of in some games. Like, nobody ever goes back and is like, oh, this character rechange abilities gone, like new animations. Or like, that is so much work that they've actually gone through to like make every hero playable. So I don't know. At this point, is we're at a crossroads because I think that even the team has admitted that they don't all agree in that direction they want to go. I think that Jeff has made a few forum posts alluding to the fact that role queue has been on the table. They've been talking about it. It seems by his tone that he's not opposed to
It's
role
something
queue,
that's
and he kind of wants to
considered.
try it out, but some other members of the team are not as keen to try. And I can see both perspectives, right? Because I love the freedom that Overwatch offers, but that freedom does come at a
At a
cost,
cost. Yeah.
especially in a game where teamwork is so reliant and you're playing with people that are so random, right? It's so random the people that you queue up with, and it can sometimes be a bad combination. Random people in a game that requires cooperation, um, in a game that has so much freedom, right? Sometimes us as
It's
human
it's a
beings are not good at coming
catch-22 of
together
letting
there.
people pick whatever they want. Like if you give people freedom, you also have to understand that some people are not going to want that freedom. They're going to say, I want this and I only want this and I always want this. You got the guy that goes to McDonald's and always orders the same thing. You know what I mean? And then you got other people that are like, well, I want to go to this restaurant. I want to order this food. And then I want to go to this restaurant and order something totally different. Variety is the spice of life, but only for the people that want it.
Yeah,
you
no,
know?
that's me. I like trying a little bit of everything.
Yeah. So, but they did say there is some highlight here before we go back into the patch notes breakdown is that if they did a roll queue, they have said on the patch forums, or not the patch forums, but just in the forums in general, they've discussed it. They said if we do something like this, it will look like this, meaning that they'll have separate ranks probably for each of the roles, which seems fitting. But the last thing here with that is that if roll queue comes out my biggest fear is that this is gonna be something that Overwatch is gonna have to develop some sizable amounts of development resources and hours for balancing and bug fixing and setting up to provide it for the players, and then it's just gonna develop into LFG after 1, 2, 3 months. It's just gonna be a feature that is in the game that people aren't using. And I really don't want that to happen. I want them to make something that people want and people play. Because people said that they wanted LFG, but the players didn't actually want it. Because there's a
Oh,
big difference between what people are crying for and they get, and then they get it for Christmas and they're like, "Oh, great, I have new socks," and then they wear the new socks like once. It's like, "Oh,
okay.
it's great."
I can see what you mean, but I think that the way they're talking about implementing role queue, I don't think that you can choose. I think that if they do implement it, it's like everybody has to go through it. Like if you're playing comp, you're doing role queue, like as simple as that. And role queue, as opposed to hero limits, is another interesting approach because one of the hardest things to balance in this game is having a player that's maybe flexing, but maybe he's an incredible diva, an
Yeah,
okay Zenyatta, and a bad Lucio, or maybe like a bad Ash or McCree. And
sure.
if that player is queuing up a diamond rank and is cycling through those heroes, he's not playing at the same level in all of the heroes. There's just huge discrepancies, and that's just another factor that makes it super hard to balance. So I do like the idea of like before you go into the game, you pick, hey, you want to be a healer, you want to be a tank, you want to be a DPS. And to be fair, that does come with their own set of logistical problems. Like, you know, Overwatch heroes are not as one dimensional as like three categories. That's it. You know, like there's main tank, there's off tank, there's, main damage, there's kind of like, your flex damage, or maybe there's main healer or of support, etc. And how do you define those things? Like a player who's a diva and a Zarya player, they're not a Reinhardt player, but I guess at least you're narrowing down a little bit more where like, hey, at least you're gonna play this defined set of heroes, and only you're gonna have a rank for only those heroes, which I think is very interesting. So if you decide to queue up as tank and you place platinum, every time you play tank, you're going into platinum rank. If you play DPS and you place diamond, then now you're a platinum on your tank and you're a diamond on your DPS. So if you queue as DPS, you're playing in diamond. And I think it's a little bit easier to keep track of your abilities that way and place you in an appropriate skill rating. It is a little bit limiting in the sense that sometimes it would be nice at the end of the match for everyone to jump into like stall heroes, and maybe a stall hero is like Mei and you're like the support class or something. So I guess you're kind of like screwed at that point. But I don't know. It's an interesting approach with this balance. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that there's just it's one of those things where if we talk about it, we could just talk about it for as long as we want until we get what the dev team is thinking about. We can tell the dev team what we want, we can talk about it, but it's like, at the end of the day, they're gonna have to figure something out, and then we can talk about what they do have. But it's important that whenever that we do get what they're creating, if this is it, to give them feedback in the appropriate channels. Go to the forums, go talk to them. Don't just go complain to your buddies on YouTube comments because they're not gonna read it. You gotta get into the official forums and you gotta go talk to people and make threads and not make threats. Okay, like make a thread, don't make a threat. Be constructive. Tell things what you don't like, but also tell things that you do like. Make sure that there's always a balance with that. Getting back to the PTR, there are some people that did get sizable nerfs, and one of them was actually Lucio. On the back of getting the big buff to displacement at large, for people to interact with divas a little bit more easily, to interact with buffing Doomfist's punch a bit more. Lucio's speed has gotten a 20% drop on the amp and a 10% drop overall. So basically, when you're amping, the amplification was reduced. So if you take down the thing that it's amping, which is 30%, and boosting that to a 50% modifier or sorry, 70% boost on that, now it's a 50% boost on a 20% number. So it's going to feel way slower when you boost, and it's also going to feel 10% slower just when you have Speed Song on in general. However, they did buff the increase from the wall ride, so that the wall ride is going to counteract these changes. So if you're riding on the walls, if you're jumping off the walls, and the movement that you had before as Lucio is not going to change in that regard. So just keep that in mind. If you're playing Lucio the way you used to, where you're jumping off walls, you're navigating in that way, you're going to feel the same. But your allies are not going to benefit from this crazy amount of speed because everyone knows how strong speed is in a game that's primarily mobility based. So this is a big thing for teams. And I did listen to a couple other people talking through some things, and lots of YouTube content where people are talking about this specific change where they don't really think that this is going to be that big of a deal. It may be a pretty big hit for engagements, and being able to flip a switch, relatively speaking. But when you amp, traditionally, if you're playing Lucio at a higher level, the amplification hits the speed first, gives you that burst, and then you switch to healing because you get a lot more healing from this amp. And you're basically benefiting from getting the speed from the amp, finishing off the amp, or the majority of the amp, which is only for a few seconds, of getting the heal, and then switching back to speed to kind of move around. Is kind of the main thing. So the amp nerf is less than the overall crossfade nerf, if that makes sense. The 10% change is much more than the amp change, more or less.
This is a change that I think definitely goes hand in hand with the Junkrat buff. I think that basically targeting their weakness right here. What makes goats really strong? One, that you have a massive health pool just rushing at you with speed boost. The one thing that they have a weakness on, their mobility, is getting offset by the Lucio speed boost. So I think that with this change is like, hey, let's make him more mobile, and now let's get Junkrat to just spam grenades on them and just deal a ton of damage to them. So make it easier for spam to hit him, give the player that can spam, Junkrat in this case, more damage.
And just make them slower. Because if you have the speed amp going, it doesn't mean that you can't get from A to B fast. You can still get there fast, just not as fast. So what you're ended up doing is you have to commit more time to being amplified on speed. You can't get as much time as you would with the heal. So you're more vulnerable, but you're faster.
Yeah, the chances of the grenade connecting with you increase because you're not moving through the map as fast. Exactly. So the speed of the grenades can match you a little bit easier. And not to mention, this change is not targeted at Lucio because they're giving Lucio more speed when he's just wall riding. So technically, I think Lucio as a whole, it's going to be faster by itself. Just in general, especially if you know how to wall ride, you're going to be going around the map fast, very fast.
Yeah, Lucio's still the same in his speed.
I would say like a little bit better, but your ability to speed up your teammates has definitely decreased. So it might make it a little bit even more desirable sometimes to not speed boost so often, but maybe use that amp for healing, right? Like you're just gonna have to like think about it a little bit more there.
So the next thing here is that the Fan the Hammer for McCree got reduced by 5, which is sizable because this is multiplicative within his Peacekeeper. When he does Fan the Hammer, 50 is per shot, not 55 per shot. So you're not going to lose an extra like 20. Was it 5 shots in the Peacekeeper, or is it 6?
6.
So yeah, you're losing 30 damage from Fan, basically. And then even more if it's amped. But that was the main thing, and then Deadeye got shifted where you're gonna get a faster damage speed increase when you use Deadeye. When you use Deadeye after 1.5 seconds instead of 2.5.
It's worth mentioning. Last episode we were talking about this change because it got decreased to 2.5 seconds, and then after the episode it got decreased again. So they're really doubling down on this change too. Again, get out their mobility. And if they're out in the open and just standing still, they're not going to be able to deal with this McCree very well. And McCree is going to be able to break shields and deal a ton of damage to them. Like, if all 6 of them are standing in front of McCree, in 1.5 seconds, he can deal, let's do them at 6 times, like 500 damage, because that's what, is it 500 or 250?
550.
550. So yeah,
it was 275, and now it's 550.
There you go. So that's 3,000 and like 300 damage.
Something like that.
Yeah. In 1.5 seconds, 3,300 damage. It's coming your way. Not even Reinhardt's shield will cover you from this. His shield will break in the 4th shot, and whoever's next is dying. And 1.5 seconds is actually doable. I would say for the first time since the game has launched, Deadeye might actually get kills the way it was intended to get kills. No more using it for reloading, no more using it to zone. Now you can actually kill people that are not a pharmacy who just launch in the sky.
Yeah, I mean, the whole purpose of the buff for this Deadeye ability was the usefulness of it. And why is this not useful? Well, because it doesn't kill anything above 250. If you have 250 health or more, you just don't do anything in a sizable amount of time. You're sitting there camping out for like 5 full seconds to try to even get some sort of damage ramp. The damage ramp is only to help solve the problem if somebody has over 200 hit points. Because over a second and a half, that's the threshold that you have before 200 health heroes, if they don't have a barrier, are dead. Okay, that's the idea here. So if you're looking at this from a raw number, you're like, well, why is it this? Or why was it 2.5? Or why was it this before? It's like, well, because 200 health heroes were a lot more common in a non-3-3 format where everyone's not behind a barrier. And now that barriers are in place and big health targets can actually move out of the way, because you think about it, 2.5 seconds or 3 seconds in the realm of Overwatch is a long time.
Very
when
long
team
time.
fights in the past, before GOATs, team fights were basically 10 to 12 seconds long.
I mean, if you think about it, Winston's max distance, you can do like a long jump in probably less than a second. And how much distance have you traversed in that long jump? And that's just Winston. You can also have Genji, Tracer, even Diva boosters. I mean, they relocate you a far distance in less than a second.
Yeah, that's the idea here. So moving down the line, we already covered Reaper. Zarya's particle cannon got this weird thing where they're adjusting the explosion radius on the right click or the alternate fire, which was variant based off of your charge before. So they got the first thing they did was change it so that it was 2 to 3 and 1 to 2 based on your energy level. And now they just were like, okay, we're going to throw it all out. It's all 2. So you have 2 meters of an explosion radius regardless of your charge rate. So we're not making it variable anymore. And the idea behind this was because when you had a larger charge or a higher charge rate, you would be dealing more damage with the ability. And then you would get the extra benefit of getting a larger blast radius. So this is actually a very big change for a GOATS meta environment, because Zarya would be able to just spam these right-click damage, have a huge charge of over, 50, 60, 70, 80, even all the way up to 100, and spamming these right-clicks, and being able to gain a large area of effect, even if you're kind of missing and kind of edging out the blast radius, you're still gaining ult charge really fast, and that's why gravitons are happening so many times in one map.
Almost every fight. Well, especially when you have such concentration of enemy players in one area. Like one of your fully charged grenades, it's like 30% charge or something absurd like that.
So they're basically trying to make it harder for you to amp your damage and also get the ease of access for this damage to hit multiple targets. That's the reasoning behind it. And then what they did is they did the whole buff to beam weapons for armor. So beam weapons are going to have a 20% overall nerf instead of a 50% nerf. So they got much better. So now we might even need to wait a couple months or wait a month or two and get some Zarya expert back on. Maybe we can call up Canasia and get him back on here, because Zarya is going to be much more of a beam hero, I would say, than the right click in some senses, because it's going to be really strong against armor.
Yeah, it's funny because now she's getting used almost rangy. The playstyle of Zarya has evolved to be almost like the range DPS in GOATS, and it just feels weird.
It feels wrong.
Yeah, it feels wrong. Yeah. It's like, what are you doing, Zarya? But it works.
Yeah. So anyways, I think that this is a really elegant change in some ways, because it's like, well, this is a good way to fix a lot of her charge rate issues, and instead of just being like, oh, we'll just make it harder to get to get the charge of this ability. It's like, well, that doesn't work, because if the meta changes, it's already going to be hard, because you're not going to have these big fat tanks to be hitting with anymore. So they just kind of made it a little bit harder in general to get more benefit from dealing a lot of damage in a big area. So they're making it so that, okay, blast radius is smaller.
To be fair, her damage limit is still the same, but the area in which you're affecting has been reduced. So I think it's again like a change totally made for GOATS, it feels like.
Right. There's also another change for Zenyatta, which I'm not sure if that was in the previous patch or not, but basically his damage is shifted from 48 to 46 per Orb of Destruction, which is his primary fire, and then the Orb of Discord got nerfed by 5% of a damage boost. So now it's no longer 30, it's 25. The reason for the damage the damage was increased from 46 to 48. Why was this increased? Well, this actually is the 5%. So if you are dealing damage with your primary fire on a Discord target, you're doing the exact same damage as you were before. That's the idea, is they don't want to nerf Zenyatta's ability to kill things with regards to hitting his own Discord targets. But they want to nerf the ability that the entire team has to getting benefits from Orb of Discord. So to give you an idea, if you have 6 targets hitting an Orb of Discord, 5 of those targets are now getting 5% less per target. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. So basically, this is a 25% damage nerf to discorded targets overall if everyone is focusing.
Yeah, I wonder if they're like also trying to target the ability of goats to kill other goats, just to
They want to
make
make it so that it's more of a wet noodle fight. It's going to take you a lot longer to kill stuff,
yeah,
even
right.
if
And it
discorded.
might disincentivize playing goats just because players might be like, well, we're not gonna kill anything like this, right?
We need more damage. You know, that's the idea. They want to get you more damage, and they don't want to give it to you in Zarya, and they don't
In
want to give
tank
it to you in
form
Zenyatta.
or healer
Yeah.
form, yeah.
Like running
Basically, that's
Zarya
what
and
it
Zen,
feels
that ain't
like.
gonna work no more because they both got nerfed to the ground. And then hopefully Lucio was probably a part of that. Now, moving forward to March 1st, this is when Symmetra got a boost to her charge rate on her primary fire. And I don't know if you know, our good friend Yankee has been, I guess you could say, preaching the gospel of Symmetra against tanks, because Symmetra does melt. And if you guys caught a game where Surefour was playing Symmetra on King's Row, you saw how fast this guy got his ult twice in a couple fights. So Symmetra is the truth with regards to her primary fire and her secondary fire weaving with that. So
She can be quite good, and I don't
she's
know,
pretty
like
scary.
I keep thinking about it, and I truly think that Symmetra, Bastion, and with a Baptiste composition will be
And
really
Orisa.
good. Yeah, and an Orisa. Yeah, Orisa's vital there. Yeah, Orisa,
Yeah.
Bastion, Baptiste, and Symmetra.
Symmetra.
Right, and you can put it like fill in other supports like a Mercy or Anna or
Mercy probably for the
and maybe
res.
probably like a
Yeah.
diva, so you can contest the objectives and kind of like have
Right.
some mobility. But like I feel like that composition is gonna be strong, and like some people keep saying like, yeah, I don't know, but like, man, the damage that comes out from that thing is insane.
Yeah, it really is. And Symmetra is one of the rare heroes where the beam weapon isn't going to be benefited when you use Baptiste ult, but if you firing secondary fires through a Baptiste amplification matrix, those things are nukes. Like,
Yes.
we didn't even get a chance to really mess with this a whole lot because we were testing so many other things, and Junkrat was so good when we were testing it. But holy cow, photon projector orbs through an amplification matrix are like I don't know. I think their damage was comparable to the same as Junkrat's, and they move faster in a straight line. So they're freaking scary. There's also a lot of updates for bug fixes over the course of March 1st, as well as March 6th and 8th for Baptiste in particular. He got a lot of graphical updates for the amplification matrix to not look like a crazy light show anymore. It's a little bit easier to find it. It's a lot also easier to see through it and not be destroyed if you're colorblind. The other thing is that they changed the way Immortality Field looks and sounds to give players more visual and audio cues that it's down, your damage is doing nothing in this field, and you need to destroy the thing at the center of it. Because when Andres and I were testing this, that amplification, or sorry, the immortality field was really quite hard to see when everything's kind of stacked up, even if you're not colorblind. So what they've done is they kind of put this god aura on this thing where it looks like,
oh, gotcha.
and you
Sometimes
can see
you
it
get
above
lost in the
targets.
middle of the battle. I mean, it's pretty noticeable once you kind of like know what you're looking for. But yeah, I can see it in between like gravitons and stuff, not being like able to see it very well.
Another thing they did is if you are a player benefiting from this effect of the immortality field, they're giving you a light yellow sheen on your character models to showcase that you are invincible or immortal. And it's very similar to kind of a resurrection light, if you will. So
Oh,
when Mercy is rezzing you, you know how there's like this big bright
yeah,
golden
yeah,
sheen on yourself? It's kind of
yeah.
like a translucent version of that on every model.
Gotcha.
So that's that. We already discussed Junkrat and Zarya's adjustments. There was a major exploit that you could do for Baptiste in 2 formats where you could play the immortality field in an out of bounds zone and survive. You could literally just go off the map, and if you went off the map
Oh,
in the
I
kill
saw a
zone and
video
you're
of
able
that,
to do
like
this
someone jumping at the bottom of Hanamura and kind of like
and just
hanging out
spamming
in
it.
there with the mortality field. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, you have to make a custom game for that. It's not like you can really pull that off in game for any benefit, but I mean, they probably don't want any weird stuff like that.
There's also something funny, kind of. I don't know if it's an exploit or whatever, but it was kind of interesting to me that someone was able to go on Oasis and they basically jumped right before a car and they used the ice block on May, and you can just ride it to the point, ride the car to the point, and then jump at the same time as D ice block, or like canceling your ice block, and then you can jump on the point and get to the point super freaking fast by hopping on a car.
Oh my god, that's a pro move right there. I don't want them
And then
to nerf that because that's like
there's
a
also
high
really
risk high reward play right there.
yeah. Yeah, there's also one where I think that there was a bug initially where you could put the immortality field on a car and like stand on it. So I'm not sure if that's still in play or if that has to touch the ground. But there was a big one that was an exploit that was super broken where you could put the immortality field underneath the payload where you can't destroy it. So they
Oh,
fixed
okay,
that.
that one
They
is
also
the kind of bug that you don't want.
that's a bug that you do not want. Yeah, the other one is it said that I'll just read it because I don't really understand this one, but it says Baptiste immortality field was not destroyed when run over by the payload. So I guess now if you try to throw it underneath the payload, it will just be destroyed by the payload. So don't try this exploit anymore. They're like, hey, you want to try it? Then we're gonna kill it.
You want to try to be
So
as smart as? Well, here you go.
yep, there's also another bug where apparently in some cases, Baptiste Biotic Launcher for healing was able to heal through barriers. So they fixed that. So you can't get the whole I can heal through your shield business. They also fixed some stuff with Doomfist Seismic Slam, where it wasn't drawing people closer for some reason, as well as basically Doomfist would not be able to move using Rocket Punch if he was recently knocked back. And then also he would not lose his upward jumping movement when he used Rocket Punch while in the air. So they fixed a bunch of his air movements. My guess is that these bugs came up when they started changing the displacement stuff on the PTR. There's a lot of displacement adjustments for Diva and moving your character models around, so that of course Doomfist is going to be a part of that. There was also a bug with Lucio for not feeling as fast on the wall jump. They very quickly patched that, like less than 2 days. There's some more visual updates with Baptiste's abilities. They also released a pirate skin for him, as well as all of his skins, and Overwatch League skins are now on the PTR for you to go check out. There's a bunch of bugs with Ana for audio and visual cues when you're boosting. Your boosted target with your nano boost would land shots. You just wouldn't get those registered anymore. So they fixed that. They fixed something where I don't know if did you and Deathblow talk about the damage amp changes to projectile heroes?
Yeah, we did.
That was a huge change, but what ended up happening on the PTR was despite the change like being really exciting, it actually wasn't giving you ultimate charge on Mercy. So what they've done is they fixed that so that if you're amping somebody's damage on a projectile hero, like let's use Pharah and Junkrat for example, when the projectile leaves the hero, if you are damage amping them when they fire the shot, you get the benefit of boosting that damage, but you wouldn't get the benefit of gaining ultimate charge when they land that shot on Mercy. You would
Oh,
only get the
interesting.
damage amp on the target that used it, unless the projectile was hitting when
That
you damage
is
amped it. So they
no
fixed it.
fun for Mercy.
Yeah, so they fixed it so that Mercy was now getting damage amp ultimate charge when you amp the shot when it's fired, not when it hits.
That's good.
Which
Yeah,
is really weird registration, but
it definitely
yeah.
seems like the last little bit of patch notes has been like ironing out these new changes and making sure that all these changes are kind of smooth. Hopefully,
Yeah.
when they release it, it'll be smooth. I mean, it is a new hero and a ton of other stuff. So, if there's some bugs that kind of like skip through the patch, I wouldn't be surprised, especially because Batiste itself as not a hero that's been extensively tested by all of the community, and as soon as people get their hands on him, they're gonna be doing everything they can with him.
Yeah.
But overall, it's going to be an interesting patch. I am definitely keeping my sights on Junkrat. He is going to be
And
the
Symmetra.
person of interest, basically, in this patch. Batiste is going to be pretty interesting, but I expect him to be bad before he's good. If any other hero release has like taught us anything, is that it takes some time for people to like truly discover things. And I think that people are gonna get good at things like destroying his barrier real fast before Batiste gets like the idea of like, okay, when do I actually use my immortality? When do I actually get the most juice for people not to destroy it? And I think it is why that composition, the Orisa, Symmetra, Batiste, Bastion, I think would be strong because universally those compositions get countered by like dive or things like throwing a diva bomb in the middle of it, right? But if you got immortality field and you try to dive that composition, you're gonna be in trouble, especially if the Batiste is releasing it at like the right times. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to see how that's going to develop, but I do think it's going to be Junkrat all around, at least that first week or two, if not the entire rest of the stage.
Yeah, I'm really curious actually to watch what happens after the initial everyone playing Barriers and Bastion and Baptiste. The triple B, right? Barriers, Bastion, and Baptiste. That's basically what I can see is the BBB rating of Overwatch going up, more or less. But that's a really bad joke. But the other thing that I want to see is likely that's something that we're going to see develop, but I don't think it's going to last for very long. This is just getting into like more prediction type stuff, but I think that if that sort of thing starts developing, I can see a lot of Zarya double sniper developing as a result of this. Getting Zarya charge, getting the ability of locking them down, throwing a dragon at them and saying good luck. And the other side of it would be I could also see Ana being way more of an option because of denying heals when you have a Bastion is huge. If you're wondering how do you counter this, you need to look at Overwatch League, what they were doing when teams were running the Orisa Bastion Hog on Junkertown. Because if you look at Junkertown strats, that's kind of what you got to be looking at to how to counter this.
I
I
was
could
gonna say
also see
like
Mei showing up a lot more.
Junkrat seems like a good counter to that, but again, like with the Riptire, you can just get in there, wipe everyone who's kind of like huddling
Right.
in that corner. But again,
Right.
if the Batiste is using the mortality at the right time, you're blocking that Riptire. You know what I mean? And the second you
Yeah, so
block
you're
it,
just
your
baiting
Ana
it.
just has to nade in the ground. Your Batiste aims his like grenades on the ground as well, and everyone's stopped off in like 1 second.
The immortality field is going to be something that I was kind of curious as to why they haven't dropped it from 250 to 200 because you can't headshot it, for example. So killing a 200 health hero in Overwatch is actually not too hard, and 250 health heroes is not too hard because of how you can amp damage plus get headshots.
It's not
Now you
hard
have
to
to,
kill, but you do need people to kind of focus it. Like as soon as your team
yeah,
sees it, it's like everybody fire at least a couple shots at the thing. Because 250 is fairly large. It's not hard to aim at. And as long as everybody gets like a few shots in there, like the thing is coming down in like a second. But
yeah, but the, the,
but if
the
you're using
problem
at the
is when you
clutch
barrier the
time,
immortality field.
well,
That's when it gets crazy.
yeah, that or like when you're using a clutch at times, right? Like they throw a graviton on you, you do it there. They're targeting immortality field rather than targeting you, right? So you're good.
Yeah.
Or you see the Junkrat tire coming towards your team, you throw your immortality shield, and sure, the immortality shield is going to explode with a nade, and all of you are going to be low, but you're not going to die. That's the point.
Yeah, I could also see more McCree Junkrat. You use the Junkrat tire, and then the immortality field goes down, and then you got High Noon. You're like, well, that was fun. And they're all dead now. The other thing you can do is you can save storm arrows on Hanzo for it. So you activate the tire, you get Hanzo in a position, you storm arrows it down, blow everyone up. It's just gonna be like there's gonna be a learning curve for a month, maybe a couple months, or even a year of how to interact with an immortality field because it's such a new ability.
Mm-hmm.
People got to figure out how to play around it and coordinate to kill it. And once people figure that out,
And
it's
use
gonna
it.
be like everything else. Yeah.
Because you use it
I
too
mean,
early and you're falling flat. Now your team is super vulnerable, including yourself.
And let's not forget about the usability of Ashe, despite because of the new changes for her dynamite not being affected by armor anymore. That ticking damage is going to be very scary.
Oh man, I'm so excited for that. Ashe is one of my favorite heroes to play.
I'm looking forward to learning more Baptiste. I already had to change around a lot of my key bindings by switching the immortality field and the area of effect heal by bindings because I play so much Ana. I use the grenade in my mind and I keep throwing the immortality field when I don't want to. So I like switch the abilities. I was like, okay, if I use immortality field on my key binding for the sleep dart, then I'm much better off. I know that Deathblow had mentioned when we were playing that he switched primary and secondary fire for Baptiste only.
Oh, interesting.
It's like, well, if I have my primary fire on healing, then I'll heal more. And if I do my secondary fire for damage, then I'll see it more like that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That would throw me off.
I tried it. I didn't like it, but you know, if you're out there, those are rebinds that maybe some people are trying out that you can test out. I think that's gonna do it for pretty much all of our stuff here. Get out there, enjoy the new patch when it comes. Try to get your placements done. I'm one placement away, but I'm waiting for my last placement with the team to go play, and then I'm kind of just waiting for this new patch. To be honest, I don't want to play our current patch. I'm hoping
that's what keeps happening to me. Like every time I want to play Overwatch, I'm like, oh, is the new patch out? No. Oh,
everyone just goes on PTR and plays on PTR.
Yeah.
Which is very rare for us, to be honest. Like we don't normally have this much excitement.
I normally hate playing on PTR because I rather like rank my account up. I want to get to my gold border pretty soon. So, but I've been playing it.
Yep. Well, let's thank a few people. We have some people to thank on patreon.com/OmnicLab. If you guys want to support us, please head over there. It helps us a lot. Andres is talking to me in the pre-show about some computer issues he's having to need to do some updates there. I know that we have funding that he would like to have more liquidity to get out and about, to get more interviews, to get involved in the Atlanta scene, to talk more with Overwatch League folks, as well as BlizzCon bucks, I guess you could say, to get there and to get our interviews and have more things to go. So the people on Patreon that are supporting us at the top level, we have Shazir, Top Score Solutions, Crimson Fail, Benny and the Jets, Brendan D, Refire with a 1, Silver Loki, Jan Jinkle, Roger B, and Christoplay and Tragic Zach. We have no new patrons this week. We actually had a lot of turnover in the last 2 months with some of our big sponsors. You're not going to notice some of those names this week in particular because they had to drop for financial reasons. Like anything, we don't ask that you take a giant hit on your personal income to support us, but if you can, we would appreciate it deeply. And even if it's not on the diamond level, we do shout you out and give you some benefits. Please let us know if you're looking for anything in particular. And a reminder for those of you that are at the $5 level and above, you do get a free coaching session every month on a VOD review that Andres and I will do for you if you submit those. So please consider that. And remember, Spotify, folks. Go to Spotify. Check us out on Spotify. There's a link in the show notes. A reminder, we have merch. Check out the website, omniclab.com/links if you want to find anything and everything. You can also leave us an iTunes review or support us on Twitch, twitch.tv/omniclab. We are affiliates, so you can give us a sub there. Andres and I are actually working on updating our new affiliate emotes. And there are new emotes in our Discord as well that I made this week.
They look fire.
They look sweet. It looks sweet. We made it a little bit more easy to see the hype icon, which Andres has used in the chat right now, but it's not that great because we didn't update it yet. So we're gonna update the hype one so it looks better on
make
dark
it
mode
even
and
more
light
hype.
mode. It's gonna be sweet. Gonna be sweet. So, anyways, we'll see you guys basically next week. We're fingers crossed, hoping for new meta and lots of new experience. We're also going to be looking for new guests in the next 2-3 weeks, so we'll try to book a new guest for you guys to have you featured up on the website. So we'll see you then, and thanks for listening to episode 141. Andres, where can people find you?
If you want to find me, you can look me up on Twitter at iPlayGames. You spell that IPLAI Games.
If you want to find me, I'm on Twitch at the tag NotRobMate. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter with the tag NotRob, and you can find us in the Discord and hang out with us anytime there. We'll see you guys next week. Remember, don't be a lab rat, be a scientist, and be good to each other, would you? Bye.
have nothing more to teach you. The rest you must learn for yourself. Walk in harmony, my student.
Bye, everyone.